All right, everybody, here we are at the Calvin Ecosystem Preserve. This is our first site of 3 sites. It's kind of a windy day. I hope the wind noise doesn't get in the way. It's also kind of cold. The wind chill's down about -8, it feels like to me. So maybe you're going to prefer these virtual labs as opposed to being out here by yourself. Actually, it's a beautiful day to be out in the woods. Whenever you get out in the woods, it's a beautiful day. All right, we are walking into the Calvin Ecosystem Preserve, and we're thinking about community ecology. What sort of interactions are going on in a place like this? Whoa, first of all, let's see that dead tree right there? That's an ash tree. All right, there's another one here. Dead ash. Dead ashes all over the place. Because there's been an insect that has come in to the upper Midwest called the emerald ash borer, and they devastate the ash trees. So we got a lot of dead trees. There's an interaction for you. You might think it's so tragic. We're losing all those ash trees, and that's true at one level. But if you're a woodpecker, you're not so disappointed. A lot of dead standing wood that's got other insects now that have moved in to start decomposing the wood, breaking it apart. And woodpeckers thrive on those sorts of insects. So there are creatures that will take advantage of something like this. One other thing I want to mention, if I look over here, this kind of looks like maybe a tangled mess to you. We don't see any ginormous trees. You know, here's one that's pretty good size right there. This is going to date me a little bit, but when I was a student at Calvin, I did a study in this area, and it was a field. All right, that was in the mid-1980s. And I was looking at individual trees that had started to grow in the field, and then looking at underneath those trees, because birds would fly to those trees, and then they'd poop, and they'd drop out seeds, and the seeds would start to grow, and you had like these little islands of woody plants, shrubs and trees that were spreading, and now we don't have a field anymore. What is that, 35 years? And it's a forest. All tangled right now because of all the dead ash trees. But one of the things I want to impress to you through this visit is that community ecology happens not only in a particular time, but it happens over time as well. And sometimes places have the interactions that they have because of some past history that's gone on. In fact, as we look ahead here, down this nice straight path in the preserve, this is an old road. It's called a carriage road, and it went straight on back to where there's a big kettle swamp that had standing water in it all year long. And the stories that have been accumulated from some of the older people that have lived around here is that that kettle swamp was a source of ice blocks. So people used to keep ice boxes, and before the time of electricity and refrigeration, they would use blocks of ice. And this is a road where they would drive carriages in and out and cut ice blocks out of that kettle swamp back there. So there's some history, right? I don't know if you can make it out here, but suddenly we get into this part of the woods and it's looking different. Here's that tangled mess. That was the field that I studied in when I was a student, and now we're looking over into here, and right about through here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is the border. This was the edge of the field. So the part to the left has always been woods, and the part to the right was previously open field. So we have a lot more older trees here. This is an old fence line. Right? The woods was owned by a family who had the Knollcrest farm, and they tapped some of the sugar maple trees in here. And I suspect some other activities went on that I will let you know as we get further down the path here. But this has been a woods. Now look, you see it's so much more open. We got some spring wildflowers starting to come up. These plants right here are called trout lilies. Oh, let's see if I can find one. There we go. There's another right there. All right. Some very nice spring wildflowers are here. A lot of the trees are maples, oaks, probably on the order of 200 years old, some of these trees. Plenty of deer back in here, other animals, lots of birds. All right. When you have lots of different plants, you can have lots of different herbivores. When you have lots of different herbivores, you can get lots of different carnivores. But you're not going to get higher levels of diversity if you don't have the lower levels of diversity. All right. So the interactions that go on here are really dependent on the amount of different species that are present. All right, and then they will find ways to interact with each other, whether it's through eating, disease, competition, mutualisms, all those sorts of things. So lots and lots of different birds in here. Lots and lots of different animals, insects, right? And people. All right. Oh, you got an axe.
I cutting down some old trees.
All right. Good. All right, here we go. I want to bring you right down over here. So where there's a bridge and a little stream. The other thing to notice, I'm walking downhill now, and you can maybe make it out a little bit, is we got some topography going on. So we got some upper areas and some lower areas. When you have diversity of topography, then you can get more diversity of other species, or of species. All right. Some species, trees, say, like it drier. Some trees like it wetter. And so the diversity in the landscape will support diversity in the biological species that are present. So here we have a stream that's flowing out of the kettle swamp way in the back. And what I wanted to show you here is this stream doesn't really have defined stream banks to it. It's really flat on both sides. And I think, along with the fact that this woods doesn't have as many wildflowers as I would expect it to have, this woods was grazed by cows. And a lot of the woodlots around West Michigan, the farmers would let their cows go into those woods, especially on hot days, and they would graze. And the cows would eat out a lot of the spring wildflowers. I'm going to just walk off over here a little bit. So again, the interactions, the community ecology that's going on in a place like this is influenced by the history that has happened in this place. I've surveyed other woods in the areas where the streams have much more defined stream banks, and they have many more spring wildflowers than this woods does. So I really think cows would go down in these low areas, and the big animals, and they probably eroded the stream bank and ate out a lot of the spring wildflowers. But, you know, there's no cows now, and the wildflowers are coming back, and so the land is changing. Here we go. So this is our first site, and when you think about community ecology, community interactions, you probably think about a place like this, a woods where you got lots of different plants and lots of different animals. By the way, there are fox here, there are coyotes that come through, lots of deer, rabbits for sure. Very beautiful scene here with the creek that flows out of the kettle swamp. Maybe one other thing I will say, is that this is a preserve. And so the primary focus here is the non-human elements. People are allowed to come in, of course, and visit. Well, maybe I shouldn't say of course. But they are restricted to the trails. And it's not a place where people can do what they want. It's a place where the other animals and insects and plants can do what they want. And we are the visitors here. In fact, there's a back part to this preserve. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it, but it's actually off limits to the public. So about half the preserve is available for public use in terms of walking the trails, and then half of it people are not allowed. And when the preserve was established, was decided that they're going to keep that off limits to people and just let the land have a Sabbath back there and let it just be wild. That's where the kettle swamp is located. And that's where the fox den is. There's owl nest back there, and it is a really wild piece of creation that is just allowing to do what it does. I think it's a really cool thing that Calvin did. Keep ourselves protected away from ourselves a little bit. All right, so if you were going to write up a food chain for a place like this, it would be a pretty complicated food chain because there's so much diversity. This time of year, maybe it's a little underwhelming because of the fact that many things have not come up yet, and a lot of birds have not returned from the south on their migration yet. But as I walk through here, I get a sense that this woods is on the verge of waking up, right? And a lot is going to be happening here in the coming weeks. I can hear some birds calling. It sounded like a woodpecker. Yeah, hear that? I don't know if you can or not. All right, so this was our first stop. And I'm going to end the video now and head on over to the second stop. Okay, everybody, thanks. Bye.